Wasn't ready for this tonight. No. All right, I guess we'll get started. It's 5 o'clock. I'll call the Scott County Board of Adjustments meeting to order. Guess we'll look first at approval of the April 4th minutes. Has everyone had a chance to read over that?
I have. I'll approve the April. I'll make a motion to approve the April 4, 2024 minutes.
Do we?
Yeah, I second.
All right, motion's been made to approve and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passed. Second order of business will be swearing in speakers. If anyone is going to plan to talk tonight, if you haven't signed in, if you could do so now.
Yes.
Sorry, guys, I didn't ask ahead of time because I was waiting for Darren.
There we go. Is that the pen? Okay. I see it. It was blended in.
Also set it on the table, and we can get it rolling still, like the table next to your bar. If you want to wait for Darren, you don't want to run. This is on purchase. Is that
Only have 3 people left.
Must
Like
have
I said,
figured that one.
by the time we moved the paper.
Yeah, that's what
Last time we did that, everybody filed slowly over that way,
That was
remember?
really, well, because that was the last year, I think, it was just like, an amount of paper, it was just like, all right, you're presenting, you're just like, all right, Woodford County, stop it.
Guess we don't have a clock up there. And someone says 15 minutes. No, no. All right, that's everyone. Charlie, can you swear in the speakers, please?
Yeah, everyone sign in to speak. Stand and raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to give be the truth, to the best of your information and belief?
I do.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, being as there are no old applications, we'll move right into new applications. S 2024-15. Lee? Oh, wait, sorry.
It's on my problem. Can I have all this stuff?
Sure.
How about before we get started, Frank, you swear or affirm that you're going to say the nice, good truth, to the best of your information and belief?
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank you very much.
Let's see. Before we get started with this application, is the applicant here? Do you have your tax compliance form with you this evening? Oh, well, I'm sorry, but we sent them out by batch email and left a phone call message this morning.
I couldn't receive it because I was at work.
I'm sorry, but we can't hear the application without the form.
Correct.
So,
That's been our rule now for, I don't know, a year, 2, 3.
Since
Not
16.
received an email.
Since 16? Oh, more than a year.
so do we email them a form, is that what you
Yes,
said?
ma'am. On the application deadline date, which they all went out, I double-checked this morning, they all went out April 11th, with the exception of one. And then this morning, I made phone calls to all the applicants that did not have their forms or their forms were incomplete.
So we will not be able to hear that application tonight. Can you verify his email address or something
Yes,
later?
I've got
And make
it
sure
here.
that he's got it?
I've got it here in the file. I didn't receive it on the, let's see.
That way we'll be sure to have it for next time.
Well, I'll just have the applicant confirm it.
Okay, that's what I'm.
That's the stuff we have in the file this morning. That's, sir, I don't really know what else I
And
can say. Taking it's awkward. An email.
if you could just simply say that this application will be continued
Yeah.
until the June meeting.
Okay. So application S 2024-15 will be continued until the June meeting pending submitting of the tax form.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Just a moment, put my eyes together here. I didn't receive the email.
Can you re-email that to him so
Yes,
he'll
ma'am.
have it for the next meeting? All right. We apologize, but that is our guideline. Sorry.
I didn't get it at all.
I'm sorry.
I'm just gonna,
Anyway, do you all get that information when they first turn in an application and tell them that they?
We tell people if they come in with it, and if pretty much if they show up with it, we ask them and remind them of it, running through the whole process. We send out an email letting people know. When you send out your staff report, you also get an FYI, hey, your form's outstanding, and then Rhett called everybody today.
Okay, so he got a form that it was outstanding when he got his application, his packet, right?
When you send the staff reports, yeah.
Okay, so he already knew this.
Yes, ma'am.
So-
When the application deadline passes and we get ready to send out notifications, we send out emails to all the addresses we got in the files, presuming that they'll receive.
We send
the
at
form
least 2
based
emails.
on the information they've given us. And then today, I noticed there were a number that were incomplete or delinquent, so I made some phone calls, got some responses, did get some responses.
I was just curious, otherwise the box has been checked.
We've checked multiple
Okay.
times, and we try to catch everybody that comes in and let everybody know as soon as possible.
All right.
With that, we'll move on to S-2024-16. It's multiple variances related to the installation of electronic church identification sign. They're interested in a setback variance from Cynthiana Road from 50 feet to 10 feet, and then the area of an electronic changeable copy sign, which is really our big long word for just a digital sign, from 30% to 66.67%, located at 2794 Oxford Village Lane. It's a 3.3 acre parcel zoned A1 in the Oxford Historic District, or in pretty close proximity. We ultimately do recommend approval of the application. So this is an aerial shot of the property here. I've included the north arrow. It's to everybody's right. This is a pretty vacant property that is owned by the Oxford Christian Church. They received a variance for additional signage area last year, I believe in January, to put up a memorial sign, and now they're wanting to put up an electronic sign that has their name on it, as well as like a rotating sign message board on it, where that kind of filters through, tells people what's going on, where they're at, that type of deal. So they're interested in having that installed on their property. These are the statutes that we refer to when we're looking at variances. I'll run through them real quick. We're making findings to essentially satisfy that the requested variance arises from special circumstances that do not generally apply to land in the vicinity or same zone. That strict application of the provisions of regulations deprive applicant reasonable use of property or create unnecessary hardship, and that circumstances are the result of actions of the applicant taken subsequent to the adoption of zoning ordinances. So this is kind of an excerpt from their previously approved variance application. So their memorial sign location is located kind of on the north side of an existing stub off of Cynthiana Road, and their church location sign would be located kind of on the other side, so flanking that entrance location. And this is a drawing of it here. So they are proposing a 8-foot tall by 8-foot wide sign with like 2 vertical poles, this digital area, a little bit of space, and then the actual name of the church we treat that all as kind of one big thing, just with spaces between, and we combine all that area together to calculate our, how much you're allowed to have, how much you're showing, and everything like that. And in the staff report, I do include some excerpts from the county sign ordinance, just kind of explaining what we're looking for these types of standards, because we see a lot more of these in the city limits. Not very often do we see agricultural properties express interest in having a sign. Usually it's a business or a church. And so for everybody's convenience, I've kind of included that in the staff report. The main things of note is that changeable copy area can be no greater than 30% of the total sign face. So right now they're looking for about 24 square feet, not 24 square feet. Yeah, 24 square feet of LED area with display and changeability, and then 12 square feet of the sign area for that standard kind of sign face that they're wanting to have on their property, just identifying the church. So that is their main variance, and then the other one being the Cynthiana Road. So this is, I was unable to run out into the middle of Cynthiana Road and take a picture, so I just used Google imagery, so we'll have to suffer through the Google quality photo. But you can kind of see roughly with the pink square where that would be located. I didn't anticipate that they would do some slight clearing, but you can really see that it's kind of sitting above the grade of the road, and as you're kind of going by, you want to have maximum visibility so that you know what's going on the property, so that users who are interested in going to the property can identify that this is where they turn, or that they'll be turning at the next light, and then they can safely take action to slow down and make those turns without having to haphazardly kind of crank your wheel at a very high speed and make a beeline. Cynthiana Road, as we know, it's a 55-mile-an-hour zone. I would like to stand on the side of the road with a sign saying, if you're going 55, here's some money. I don't think that I would ever lose money on that one. I think people go pretty quickly. So anyway, these types of signs are commonly requested by these users that have a lot of frontage. I would like to note this is a little bit closer to their stub. It's a little bit harder to see the square here because I'm kind of trying to adjust for perspective, but you can kind of see that location sitting and flanking the south side, north side of the entrance, and then the other sign sits on the south side. These are my general findings here. It talks about the circumstances of the property itself. I failed to mention that this does have frontages and driveways onto two major roads. So Cynthiana being a major arterial, getting to Cynthiana and to Georgetown and elsewhere in the community, and Oxford Village being that principal entrance location across from their church location is where their primary entrance is anticipated to be. Talks a little bit about this being a not uncommon request. We have a similar request that will also be reviewed tonight for signage. Having changeable copy area allows for you to not have to change out everything every time. It increases your visibility, and it ultimately can be a benefit to users who are interested in that. Staff ultimately finds that the approval of the variance would not adversely impact public health, safety, welfare. Having that sign area, having that visibility allows for people to make turns safer, in a much more kind of planned attempt as opposed to cranking your wheel and making a beeline when you hit the next intersection or the stub. And ultimately, staff finds that this meets the requirements of KRS 100.243 and recommends approval of the variance request. It references conditional use permit. This is a variance, just something to note. The first four are standard ones for signage, so we want you to be adhering to our regs, everyone else's regs, get a sign permit, and then let us know if you need further signage. If you have to find out you need more area, because these are variance granted items, we need to have you come back, which is why they're here today. Conditions 5 and 6 really are the ones we stick or that we kind of attach to electronic changeable copy signs. We want to make sure they're operating safely, that they're getting demo permits that they need to, they're clearing everything right, they're putting in their electrical appropriately. And then item 6 is talking about making sure you're operating safely. So if something happens, your sign will not just start high beam flashing everybody. It'll freeze. It'll kind of have a little fail safe in it, and it's operating safely. So that's what we like to see. Usually when we get these types of ones, it's building inspection will let us know, be like, hey, their sign's operating fine, and that usually satisfies that condition. But it is something we do note. And then this is the property here. We do have a representative of the church if you guys have questions specifically.
Applicant
Frank's over
here.
there.
Is there anything you would like to add in addition to what she's explained?
Yes, I'm Frank Wiseman. I represent Oxford Christian Church, and we were here before, and you approved the sign. The only reason we're here tonight is to ask you to approve the 50-foot setback being changed to a 10-foot setback, because the sign has already been approved, and everybody at the church thought we could put it anywhere appropriate, but we went to the building inspector's office. He told us it had to be 50 feet from the boundary, and so we had to apply for a variance to put it 10 feet back. And we'd appreciate your granting us this variance.
Charlie, everything okay with you?
Yeah, I'm assuming the primary reason is because the right of way is so wide there that to put it full 50 feet is almost in the next county.
Yeah.
Yeah, the boundary's already almost 100 feet back from the highway, so this would put us 110 instead of 100.
We've done this very thing.
You know,
This is not.
150 would be so far back, it would be almost unusable, so.
You need a
Real hard.
80% sign then.
Yeah, with a big old sign, yeah.
We don't mind the 80%.
Yeah.
Nothing like swinging in and taking over, but are there any questions for the applicant?
Nope.
We'll add it to the record that you.
Goodness, what a pushy fellow you are.
I know, I'm sorry. Anyway, any questions, comments, or anything? Thank you, appreciate it. Is there anybody else here that wants to speak on this application?
I would like permission to address the board on another issue after you've voted on this and that comes, if that's possible.
If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve application S 2024-16, subject to all the staff recommendations and requirements.
Sonia Barrett makes the motion, I'll entertain a second. Janet Holland seconds the motion. Any questions or comments? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. There are none, motion carries. Depending on what the next subject is,
Excuse me?
by all means.
Oh. On this issue of a surprise last-minute notice, I spent all day today filling out a form for, this thing here. I got a notice at 9 o'clock this morning, but I had to have that form in by tonight. And I know the previous applicant didn't get a notice at all. So these last-minute notices, I think, should be given a couple of days earlier. I don't know if that should be a requirement, but I think it should be.
So here's what I'll say to that. Usually we get them out a lot sooner. Sometimes we
Yeah.
fail. But the notices do get out a lot sooner, so I appreciate it. We do try to get them out. We're sorry for the late notice.
Yeah, but I'm not sure we should be penalized for them getting it out late.
Understood.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to make like an administrative note, and this is
Like what we do internally, if we need to adjust, I mean, you guys can direct us to do so. But typically, as Rhett stated, after we accept the applications, we let people know, usually the day of the application deadline or the day after, that we have an expectation that you fill out this form. Sometimes our stuff does get filtered into junk. I'm not terribly surprised. I also would probably filter this stuff into junk sometimes, but that's not the point. Typically, when we send out your staff report, which is a week before the meeting, to whatever email we're given, we'll include, hey, you have an outstanding form, also here's your staff report. Please get this form in. If you have questions, you can reach out to us. Again, that doesn't solve the issue if you keep getting filtered to junk mails, where you're just not seeing it, or if it gets kind of caught in some weird spot with the system. And then with that noted probably about a year or so ago, we tried to, when people stop by for an application to the Board of Adjustment, we also give them the paper form that we keep on hand and say, this is your form, this is the application form. Also, it's not due at the time of application, but it is due before your meeting. You need to have this form filled out. So if there's another direction that you guys advise that we go towards, we can try different routes. I have no problem with sending out daily FYIs or,
Yeah.
Way. I mean,
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question.
yes.
Sorry, Janet.
That's our.
Let me ask you a question. Before we get our staff report, which is usually the week before the meeting, Can we make it a requirement that those forms are included in our staff report as well?
So
That way
have
we
them
can-
at the time of staff report receipt.
That way, if they're already in, we already know it, and we don't have.
Okay, yeah, we can make sure to have that included,
Charlie, I need a
in the
motion.
scan-ins and everything.
I think you just say that, you make a motion, but we talked about it before, they really don't need to be on an agenda until we have the form.
Right, until everything's
Otherwise,
complete.
We're out of compliance with county law.
That's
Uh,
fine.
City law.
In order to fulfill that
We
requirement.
need to mail those a little bit sooner. The
The,
post office out where I live.
Yeah.
We might have Georgetown address, but a lot of times it's 2 days
yeah.
after the.
Janet has identified that issue too, where it was like the day of a meeting or the day before, and she came by and was like, I don't have a packet. And I was like, what, where
And I
is this
didn't
getting stuck? Yeah, I remember.
Like
printing
11
them out.
days to get our,
Yeah, so we can, we'll make some adjustments internally to try to get these out as soon as possible. Just a thing of note, some of these are coming in like a couple of days before, so they'll look administratively incomplete, so we'll have to take some action internally to make sure, like, on agendas, conditionally type note or something like that. Because with the quick turnaround that we have, where we're getting a filing deadline 3 weeks before the meeting,
FYI.
it kind of makes it a little bit difficult to get everything administratively done with the way that the office functions, so.
I think we probably, and Charlie, I'm going to suggest we make a motion to put this into the record. That way it's on stated, that way we have it.
Yeah, that's fine with
So
me.
I'm going to make the motion that we have the tax code and enforcement form in place and signed off by all the pertinent parties before our staff packet reaches us.
Okay, so it
And
needs to
included
be
in our
in-
staff packet.
All right, we'll
I
make
got-
a deadline for that.
I got a second
Very
by
good.
Janet Holland first. Any questions? All approved by saying aye?
Aye.
All opposed by the same? There are none, motion carries.
All right, we'll make an amendment to our, going forward, I'll make an amendment to our schedule saying packet deadline and form deadline.
Yeah.
And then if it isn't in by then, we'll just have to call it quits. If we're getting repeated issues with the post office, we'll have to make adjustments on maybe staff report release dates, or we'll have to send out, I don't know, we'll figure that one out at a later point. Post offices, we've been aware that since I've been here almost 3 years, we've had mail notices for FYIs get out late, and people, they get returned to us like a month later, and we're like, what is this doing here now? This person never knew type deal. So anyway, we will address those ones going forward. I'll make amendments to our schedule and our internal procedures to make sure that we get as many people aware of things as fast as possible.
Well, we know we've got problems with our mail, because, I mean, even the newspapers, you may not even get one. Local newspapers, you may not even get one of those at the time.
Yeah.
Been through that. But it just seems unfair to that.
No, I completely understand. No, yeah. It's really frustrating for them, and we get hear it all the time, and we'll just try to continue to communicate that to people, giving more of a hard deadline for that one, I think, and trying to constantly keep everybody in the loop on what's going on. Unfortunately, filtering stuff to junk mail, I can't really do a ton with, but at least we'll try to keep the lines of communication open as frequently as possible. And I'll tell Carol and everybody, we'll get it.
Okay, thank you.
Anyway.
All right, we'll move on to the next application, S-2024-17, Cameron Collins.
Thank you. This is a conditional use permit for a secondary residence for a family member at 4333 Long Lake Pike, south of Gaines Road in the Locust Fork and Long Lake Pike intersection. It's an A1 zone parcel, approximately 20.8 acres in total area, and staff does recommend approval of the application. This is an aerial shot of the property here. And this is the most recent survey done of the property. So I try to include the 11 by 17s. I made a misplacement on the lines exactly, but this is the shape of the property here. It has a larger backland area. Kind of the front portion is buildable, and that is where an existing residence is located, identified in purple here. And now they're looking to add a secondary residence for a family member identified in the yellow behind that property. Secondary residences, we're really looking to make sure that you are meeting our step back requirements between the proposed building and the property line, and then keeping 100 feet between the proposed building and an existing residence or building, which this seems to satisfy without any issues. The second item of note is that we're just making sure that you have the density standard met, which we do. We're not seeing an excess number of houses that would violate density requirements. Last one is just a clerical thing of if they want a new entrance location, this is a state-maintained highway, so we need to have them get a permit from KYTC. More often than not, people share driveways, but just in case for some reason you don't want to share one with your mother-in-law, we want you to get your permits in so that you're not just putting a driveway in somewhere that may not be the safest location. 3 findings, typical 3 findings, talks about the area of the zoning ordinance this regulation comes from, talks about the negative impacts and that there wouldn't be any anticipated, nor any hazard or causing issue for the character or other factors in the area, and just talking about the property itself. It's a little bit out of order, but they're all there, and these are what we have right now. Ultimately, staff recommends approval of the application, subject to 8 conditions. First 4 are typical 4. We ask that everyone gets an address, makes our lives a little bit easier, asks that you build your house within more than 50 feet from the property lines and at least 100 feet from existing structures, and that if for whatever reason, it's just more of an FYI, if you need a new entrance location, who you need to contact. So this is a state road, so they need to contact District 7. Besides that, that's all I got.
Any questions for Elise? All right, thank you. Is the applicant here on this one? Anything you want to add to that?
No, and I didn't sign in.
Oh, well, if you want to sign in, you can. Please do, actually, if you want to talk, yeah. Or if you have no comment, you don't need to. I think we can make this really quick. Well, let me ask, any questions for the applicant?
No.
All right, in that case, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we approve the conditional use permit for S-2024-17 for secondary residence.
Okay, Rachel makes the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Sonia Barrett seconds the motion. Any questions or comments? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same. There are none. Motion carries. All right, moving right along. Next application is S-2024-18, James and Deborah Combs. Brett?
Thank you, sir. Okay, now, this application before us this evening is essentially a 3-part application. At 1148 Stamping Ground Road, the applicant is seeking approval for a conditional use permit for the operation of a small welding shop as a home occupation. They're also asking for 2 variances, one of which is a dimensional variance for a new building. Our side yard setbacks in A1 zones are 50 feet. They would like permission to reduce those to 30 feet on either side of the building. And it's a 60 by 80 foot building, and we'll get into that in just a moment. And also a signage setback, which we treat as an accessory structure in the A1 zone as well, with a 50-foot setback. They'd like to reduce those to 21 feet and 35 feet respectively at the road frontage and also the adjacent property line to the northwest.
Okay.
The subject property is zoned A1. It's 1.391 acres, and overall we are recommending approval of all 3 items in front of you this evening. Maybe. This is the subject property here. It does have frontage along Stamping Ground Road there to the northeast. The applicant also owns the property that would complete that rectangle there to the south and east of the property line up to the north. Again, zoned A1, all the immediately surrounding areas are also zoned A1. There are no previous approvals or applications for this subject property. However, the applicant has approval for the existing business he wishes to move at the adjacent property I pointed out before, address number 1146. Initially, it was permitted and in 1999 by the Scott County Board of Adjustment, and then in 2002, there was a secondary approval to allow for the construction of a new building, hence the expansion of the business on 1146. Again, there is nothing on 1148. I know it's probably hard to see for the members of the audience here, but you also should have received copies of the previous meeting's minutes, approvals, and the nature of those. There was mention of the current sign that exists, I believe, in the 1999 application. Technically, it's not in compliance now. There was no such ordinance then, but it is pre-existing non-conforming. This purple here is just to highlight where the business is now. Again, the applicant seeks to move the business onto the next parcel over. Home occupations are classified as our ordinances as generally a professional operation or office of a studio or personal services maintained with one person or staff, or no staff, excuse me, conducted within a dwelling or accessory building. However, this application and the previous approval kind of exceeds those limitations, but our ordinances do allow for that. Hence the first item there, home occupations that also exceed the limitations in the definition of such. This is specifically allowed in the A1 zone as well. Again, we identified the project site at a different address from 1999-2002. The applicant states that the intended business hours for the new operation to be Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and Saturday from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. They expect a maximum of 5 employees. Again, they've expressed the goal is to move operations from the smaller parcel adjoining to 1148. Moving to a larger, more accessible site is reasonably anticipated to increase the safety and welfare of the surrounding community, as well as the staff or clients that come and go. The current address is much closer to the road, smaller drive, smaller amount of parking. Moving to this location would add additional space for all of that. However, given there being more space, the applicant has not indicated whether or not additional work will be taken on to increase traffic or impact to the community. I will let them speak to that as well. This is where the operation is currently at 1146. Again, you can see that this building is closer to the road than the subject site we're looking at now. It also adjoins a residential property directly next door. So I believe the applicant states that by moving it to this entrance, which would be on the opposite side of the applicant's property that adjoins a vacant, so to speak, agricultural field, it'll get it away from the residential traffic a little bit more. The site is deeper, allows for more parking. The entrance is a little bit better maintained as well. However, with the conditional use moving to this parcel that also adjoins another ag parcel, with this being a change of use, we would require a fencing and screening. And basically how that reads is a 6-foot minimum height fence of diamond mesh or no climb equivalent. There is fencing around the property now. If the applicant can demonstrate that this would meet those requirements, this restriction would be waived per the conditions of approval. Again, that's for the determinants of the applicant to present to us. If the new fence is required, the applicant will have to pay for it themselves, maintain it, all that, even if it adjoins other properties. This is an overhead of the property. You can kind of see the surrounding agricultural fence there. I've got a little better shot of it to the north and the southwest here of the parcel. This is down the property line of the parcel. You've got the stone fence there, and just outside of that, and honestly, I'm not sure if this fence is the applicant's or the neighbor's. I'll let them clarify as well and speak to these requirements they may need to fill. Secondarily, we've got a dimensional setback variance for the proposed construction of the new building. Again, what would be the side yards, the applicant is requesting to reduce those from 50 feet to 30 feet on either side. It may require an additional variance for the sign, because technically, even though the applicant owns the adjoining property, it encroaches on that property line as well. And again, those are requested to be 21 feet and 35 feet respectively along the frontage and the northwest property line that actually you just saw a picture of. A single pole sign may be allowed on any agricultural zone as a conditional use. And again, the 1999 application and approval spoke to that sign. However, there were no setback requirements at that time. As Elise said before, findings necessary for granting variances. Essentially, we have 3 conditions that the application has to meet for you all to consider to approve those. Again, the requested variance should arise from special circumstances which do not generally apply to land in the general vicinity or same zone. The strict application of the provision would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of their land or property or create unnecessary hardship on the applicant, or the circumstances are a result of actions the applicant taken subsequent to the adoption of the zoning regulation from which relief is sought. For the new building, the applicant states it's going to be measured 80 feet by 60 feet located near the rear of the property. The building will be 30 feet from the property lines on either side yard, the northwest and southeast property lines. There's adequate distance both to the front and the rear to accommodate all the setback limitations. The applicant states that the size and location of this building would allow for adequate space to conduct their business while providing for safer access, as I've kind of shown you before. There does exist in the rear of the property a 500-year floodplain zone as well as a line of 100-year floodplain. It extends fully 57 feet into the rear of the property. However, the applicant, as they proposed where this building will go, should be outside of these zones. There are no limitations of construction within a 500-year zone. However, we prohibit any construction or disturbance whatsoever in a 100-year zone. Again, by the drawings submitted in your staff report, the applicant shows that this building should be outside and beyond these zones. This is the proposed construction site per the application. Again, it's approximate, but I just wanted to point out where the building should be located and also which areas are the setback encroachments. I know northwest, southeast isn't very descriptive when we're talking about side yards. I understand that. But as you can see, with this larger site, the applicant will have much more room in the front for parking, turnaround, deliveries, clients coming and going, keeping traffic a little further off the street. And if they were to move the building, to the front or rear, they have plenty of flexibility to do so. Again, in your staff report, you did receive drawings of the proposed building. And judging by the location submitted, it should be out of these floodplain zones, which would be the left side of the picture there for you. It's rotated. It also does notate on the bottom right quadrant there, that rectangle shown, there's a small designation for the existing sign, and then the new sign directly above it. They're in approximately the same position. However, locating the sign as they've applied for would keep it out of the driveway, out of parking, in a green space area that is on the property at 1148. This is to illustrate that flood zone. Again, we have no restrictions whatsoever for construction within a 500-year plane. There is a small amount of a 100-year plane down there in the southeast corner. Again, it's strictly prohibited without floodplain construction permit to disturb or construct in these areas. But again, the applicant has shown the building should be well outside of that zone. In summary, the applicant is requesting the variances to reduce the setback requirements for the freestanding sign from 50 feet to 21 feet along the east property line, which would be the frontage property line, and 50 feet to 35 feet along the north property lines, which would be the side. The applicant intends to relocate the existing 12-foot tall sign, as I understand it, with 14 feet of sign area, which does comply with our current ordinances, from the property 1146 to 1148. Freestanding signs in the A1 zoning district are subject to the same setbacks as primary and accessory structures, which would normally be 50 feet. Adhering to those ordinances strictly would place the sign right in the middle of the parking lot or working space, honestly. Again, the placement of this sign would put it in green space outside the parking driveway and still off the road frontage in a safe manner. Again, just to notate about where the new sign should be, there's a little landscaped area there at the front of the property, which, as I understand, that's where they'd like to locate the sign. There is the existing sign that they intend to move, as I understand. Again, this new location will keep it a little further off the road while still being able to be seen by passersby, clients, deliveries. In conclusion, the project site is a 1.391 acre A1 zone parcel. Our section of the zoning ordinance lists home occupations that exceed the limitations as the definition of conditional use allowable by permit in an A1 zone. The applicant's business was approved initially in 1999 by conditional use permit on the adjoining parcel 1146. In 2009 and 2002, this case was amended to allow for construction of a building that expanded the scope of operations. The strict application of the provisions of these regulations would deprive the applicant reasonable use of the land or create unnecessary hardship on the applicant. And we believe that approval of the conditional use permit and variance requests would not adversely impact public health, safety, or welfare. Additionally, approval of the conditional use permit will not alter the general character of the vicinity. Overall, we are recommending approval for both the conditional use permit to operate a small welding shop as a home occupation, a variance to reduce the side yard setbacks from 50 to 30 feet on either side, and a variance to reduce the setback requirements for the freestanding sign they wish to locate from 50 feet to 21 feet and 35 feet along the northeast and northwest property lines. Such as the conditions of approval, most of them are pretty well standard conditions of approval for variances and conditional use permits. However, on number 5 here, being that the operation currently exists at a different address, if the applicant is choosing to vacate operations at that address, the conditional use permits, once it's vacated, they're null and void. So if the operation is going to move next door, either they would have to reapply or it would be void, assuming they're choosing to vacate it entirely.
Any questions for Rhett?
Yes, ma'am.
Just 2 quick questions. So are they going to like not use the old building at all anymore? Is everything going to the new building? And is a sign just relocating the same sign? Okay.
The way I understand the application, the word relocate is used in all instances, but I'm sure the applicant
nodded.
would like to speak and
I drive by,
clarify.
I was just asking.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to push the sign back further away from the road than it is now for visibility from my neighbors. Make it look better in my flower bed. I've got roses planted. It makes it look more aesthetic. And just to, mainly safety, just get it away from the road so my neighbors can see to pull out of the driveways.
Okay. No.
All right. Any other questions for Rhett? All right, Rhett, thank you. James, anything you want to add?
Thank you.
6 foot fence, I need to clarify that.
Thank you. I'm James Combs. I've been there for 25 years. And evidently, I've had no complaints because I've never heard anything. I want to build a bigger building. One, for the main thing is aesthetics of my property. I'm a flower nut, tree nut. I like my property to look very, very nice. As far as the fencing, I have a fence down both sides of my property, but I've already, and it wasn't in the picture, I've already planted 20 of the Tahuji evergreen trees. And I'm going to continue to plant them to make a landscape fence instead of a woven fence. I want it to look really nice other than look like a woven fence. I live there too, so I really want my neighborhood to look nice. Another reason I would like to move my business back and make it larger is we've got a vocational school right up the street. We've got a lot of nice young men and women that are coming out of that school that I would love to be able to train under a co-op situation. And I can't do that in my smaller facility. If I could bring them and train them for real world application, I would love it because I've got no one to leave anything to other than maybe I could teach them what I know and get them out into the real world. So that's really what I'd like to do, not to take any larger projects. The main reason I'd like a bigger building is to make my property look better by parking trucks inside at night. You don't see any trucks. You don't see anything that's safety for my trucks, theft, and I can plant bushes and trees, make it look good. So that's really my main reasons.
James, are you completely vacating the old building, going over there?
Yes, I will no longer be using it for business at all. As a matter of fact, once I move, if it's allowed, I would like to take the metal off the building and put vinyl siding on it to make it match my house. I'd love to put the stone around it just like I did my house and using it for a personal garage to park my wife's car in. She's already said dibs on the parking indoors.
I think that's allowed, by the way.
Yeah.
That's right.
Smart man.
I like what you've done to your house in the last few years. I mean, we
Well,
don't-
thank you.
Okay.
We've worked hard at it. We want it to look nice.
It
And
does look nice.
Rhett, quick question. Rhett,
Sir,
quick question for you. The trees that he's planting, that meets the boundary standards. You guys are satisfied with that?
We'll have to look and review it. To kind of set a little bit of context to this, because I had this on this board, there were some concerns from Soil Conservation Board that the boundaries between urban level uses and actively agricultural areas were insufficient. Falls were getting over, animals were getting poisoned by buckeye trees and dying. It was a whole issue, so we put in this thing to try to buffer as much as possible, put the cost on the person who's bringing the urban level uses. Most of their stuff is just no climb, 6-foot tall type fences. I remember having, you remember that meeting?
Oh, yeah.
Where we had to essentially have a meeting of the minds and discuss what the intent was kind of at the meeting, which was fun. So we'll have to look and see, again, the intent is to really prevent like any crossover. Like if you're able to like throw a ball through it, that's kind of less of what the goal is. Like, it's meant to really stop stuff from reaching into the agricultural areas and putting that additional cost on the park.
I'm going to ask a really bad question.
Yeah.
Is that when you first plant them or when they're fully grown?
We'd have to look at that one. Certain trees take longer and it kind of defeats the purpose if it takes 20 years for it to grow.
So here's my question, and James,
Yeah.
maybe you can answer. Did you plant the trees in between, I think you did, in between the existing cattle fence that's there and the stone fence, or where did you plant those trees coming down?
They are planted 12 feet from the fence that I put in, and the fence, you might go back, the fence, the wire fence there,
yeah.
that's my fence.
That wire fence is your fence
That is my
already?
fence, on this side of the stone fence.
So you already have adequate fencing that's been separating the things, but did it
I
reach the
bought-
height in requirements wise for the trees in,
Yeah.
correct?
The trees I purchased, I planted them 11 foot off of the fence onto the inside, and they'll grow 3 to 5 feet a year.
We can grant the waiver because he's already got a fence there plus the trees, correct?
Yeah.
Charlie?
I defer that one to Charlie.
He's literally got 2 fences plus trees.
See, wonderful idea.
Me too.
And he said the tree will grow 3 to 5 foot a year, so give him 2
Yeah.
years and he'll have
Yeah.
I wish that was the case for me.
10-foot tall tree.
I was saying, I wish that was the case for me. I could have used that. All right. I was going to say, do we need to make a motion to grant that waiver on this property? Just to have it on record? Well, in that case, let's stop here for a minute. Hey, so I'm going to make the motion to grant the waiver to have the trees in between the fence and the stone fence, which already belongs to Mr. Combs, and to be utilized as the buffer in this case.
Thank you.
Waive the requirements of.
Waive the buff, yes, waive the landscape requirements. And Rachel, you second that? Rachel seconds that. Any questions or comments? All in favor by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by the same. There are none. Motion carries.
Part 2.
Yep. Thank you, James.
You're good. We have part 1, part 2.
The motion.
Permit application and the
ahead. All right.
variances for the building and sign.
In that case, I will make a motion to grant approval for the application S-2024-18, giving the staff recommendations for approval.
Thank you.
That's the motion. Janet Holland seconds the motion. Any questions or comments? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same. There are none. Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right. Enjoy your evening. All right.
I would like to just make sure that we have it clear for the record, and so I'm understanding when we send out this letter tomorrow. Specifically, this agricultural buffer has to deal with condition of approval number 4. So with your motion, is the intent to essentially revoke that condition of approval because it satisfies it? Or are you, what is?
No,
The vote is too strong.
I was going to say,
Yes.
You supplanted it.
my intention is that he has met that requirement and has gone above that requirement already.
Okay, very good. Just want to make sure that
Yeah.
when
It's
we're
adequate.
sending our stuff out.
Yes. He has already adequately met that
I can
requirement.
phrase it, I can put in a letter that, per condition number 4, applicant has already demonstrated it's satisfied.
Yeah,
That's
we'll look at
perfect.
the link.
Thank you for telling me what I should have said. There you go, Rick. Thank you.
It's all
Appreciate it.
good, we just, with
Yep.
recent things, we want to make sure that we're understanding
No, I
what
agree.
your goal is.
Right.
And I'm not just listening. So-
All right, agreed.
Who seconded that?
Janet.
Supplanting, by the way. Thank you very much.
Oh, wait a
Well, the
minute.
supplanting,
No.
that was Rachel.
Rachel
No,
first.
Rachel did.
Oh, you didn't have, oh.
The supplanting.
Janet,
saying the planting.
Janet seconded the motion. Yeah. All right,
get there in
James,
a
thank you.
minute.
It's a lot of steps.
You all are welcome to stay for more punishment, or you can leave if you would like. It's up to you all.
I'll send you a letter tomorrow, or Brett will send you a letter tomorrow.
All right, I believe our last application,
You have something else you want to say?
Yes, I know that you're in a commercial setting, which this is not a commercial, it's just a variance. You plant a tree every 45 feet. We plant them every 11, we put 20 of them in. We plan on putting another probably 30 or 40 around the boundary just to make it look nice.
Nice.
Show place.
can we have more of him come in here?
I would love to see people investing in their properties and putting too many trees as opposed to trying to get by with the least amount
Me
as
too.
possible, or counting a little twig in the ground, not a tree, as a tree. But let's move on.
All right.
Our next application is, and this is an incorrect reference for the file number, it should be 19. S-2024-19, a conditional use permit for a home occupation to operate a farm business with farm store and the operations of a food trailer, kind of two birds, one stone. At 481 Sims Pike, direct access and arterial access is Sims Pike. It's about a mile north of Cherry Blossom Way. It's an A1 zone parcel, approximately just over 5 acres, and staff does recommend approval. It's been a long time. This was one of the first ones I had to do for this job, and looking at that staff report, I was like, I've grown so much as a person. Anyway, before this was a completely vacant property subdivided from a larger farm, and they got a conditional use permit approval for home occupation to do the farm stand. We've been kind of in conversation with Mr. Linder and his business partner on this one, making sure we're kind of on the same page, getting everything situated. And in the time, like, they haven't opened the farm stand operation, but they have, like, put in a barn, put in a house, put in some shop space for personal use, and then also some of it would likely share some of the dual use, so it's also business type use. So this is our updated aerial from December of this year. The pictures have been provided by the applicant, and they are in the packet that you guys got. When we're looking at home occupations, we're looking to make sure that home occupations are conditional use permit in the agricultural district. They can exceed the limitations of the standard definition of a home occupation. So Brett kind of mentioned it. Typically, you see them as an FFL, or you see it as a hair salon, or someone doing your taxes. But in the agricultural districts, because occupations vary so much, we kind of have this allowance that says, hey, we understand that this is typically what you would see in an urban area, but a rural home occupation is different. And so a lot of our farm stands get a home occupation permit to operate because it's their home site and they're also farm it. These are kind of our general standards for it. Talks about area of it, talks about signage, talks about pollution, that type of jazz. This is an aerial shot again with the notation. So they have an existing residence identified in yellow, the existing barns identified in purple, and then an existing entrance, gravel lot, and then a farmed area with mobile greenhouses. That was a big item of discussion. We talked a lot about, do these count as buildings, and it was a whole thing. But generally speaking, this is showing our kind of uses right now on the property. It's very similar to what we saw previously. I don't have a slide of the previous ones so that we don't confuse ourselves, but I believe in the packet I included it. If not, it pretty much models the same system of home and stuff up front, farm in the back. The applicant hasn't really specified that he would be changing his business operational details. So if this is ultimately approved, staff recommends that it keeps the same details of operation. So Tuesday through Saturday, 8 till 7, limited noise activity, limited scent, et cetera, just kind of keeping typical farm hours, typical farm smells, typical farm sounds. Ultimately, we really just wanted him to come back to say, hey, it's been a little bit, things have shifted a little bit. For example, the main thing that changed is that they were interested in having a commercial grade kitchen installed on the property, but they've since kind of restructured how they want to do things, instead opening up a food truck where they can take it to locations and then the food truck comes back at night, hangs out on the property, gets loaded up with food again, and then goes out to another event and just kind of goes back and forth. Food trucks are monitored with the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. They're not actually a health department thing, which I found out last year. They're really different. They're permitted as vehicles more so than they're permitted as a food thing, but they still get food permits. Mm-hmm. It's different. It's crazy to me. I've learned so much all of a sudden about food trucks. I thought I knew about them. So anyway, so they would be getting their necessary permits and everything with the motor vehicle offices and those types of things. These are just a quick summary of the business details. These are the 3 findings. Talks about the home site, talks about the standards for home occupations where you find it in the ordinance, and that staff does not anticipate that the impacts of this would negatively impact public health, safety, welfare, or alter the character. A lot of kind of smaller businesses are in this area. A lot of people are farming. This is just a way to make farming more viable for them so they can continue farming or start up a farm. And ultimately, staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit subject to 5 conditions. The first 3 are typical 3. I did modify the fourth condition, which typically only talks about returning only if there's changing in the conditions. This just adds an additional sentence that says that if they want to expand a bit, expand uses and the building that they want to build is going to be primarily or solely for a business use, they essentially have to come back to us, let us know, and then we would evaluate if at that time a development plan is necessary. Because they're just using existing structures on the property, we're not really seeing additional development plan things because they're not using or building something new for this. They're just kind of having a dual purpose. So that's kind of where we're coming from on that side of things. And then the fifth item is just talking about operational details. Besides that, I haven't really heard anything back from anyone. It's kind of weird. I didn't get a lot of neighborhood feedback on any of these, unless Rhett did, but that's all I have. And I believe Mr. Linder is not here, but he's on the phone. So if we would like to speak to the magic box where he is in.
Any questions for Elise first?
Nope.
Any questions for Mr. Linder on the phone?
Hold on.
Nope.
No questions?
Well, unless he wants to add something.
Not unless he wants to add anything.
I'm a pretty silent partner.
You're just the guy holding the phone, aren't you?
I'm all right.
All right. All right, in that case, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve application S 2024-19 for a conditional use permit, I guess the revision thereof, and expansion, subject to the staff recommendations.
I'll second. All right, Tommy, you second. Tommy seconds the motion. Any questions or comments? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same. There are none. Motion carries.
I do have a couple administrative things now that we're done with our regular business. Obviously, no one is required to stick around for this. This will get kind of boring.
Thank you.
2 continuing education things, and I meant to send this out sooner. We've been incredibly busy. So unfortunately, things have fallen aside that I didn't mean to have fall aside. Next week is the online conference that the National Planning Organization does. We'll be hosting some seminars in the basement, as we've typically have done for the past couple of years. There's 6 opportunities on Wednesday from 11:15 to 4:30, start times, I should say. 7 on Thursday, starting from 10 a.m. to 4:30. We do have planning commission that day, so we will probably not be sitting in on it, but we'll set it up in the basement, and you can give us an SOS call if something goes wrong. And then Friday, we will have 6 sessions, ideally from 10 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. So you guys are more than welcome just to kind of show up, let us know. I'm going to try to get out the agenda of what things we're going to host in the basement, or at least the total agenda, and then essentially if you guys show up and people are 50-50 on something, you can just pick which one you want to watch. Other continuing ed things is that the Kentucky League of Cities is doing some continuing education coming up. More of their stuff is honed for city officials and the planning and zoning's like commissions, but they do have some smaller seminars and events, and their their state conference is in Lexington this year, so there may be some seminars that may be interesting to you guys if you want to show up. You might be also rubbing elbows with like a mayor, so I don't know if you want to rub elbows with the mayor. It's up to you guys. So that's that for continuing ed. Second item is financial interest statements. I have Rachel's. Janet gave me hers already. Sonia swears that she gave this county one or us one. I don't know where it is. I don't know what she's talking about. Darren and Tommy, I need your guys' ones in.
Turned it in to Janie at the office.
Woo! All right, Tommy.
It's on his desk in the house.
All righty. Well, so we'll get it done. I mean, we're still kind of before the deadline, so we're pretty okay on everything. One last item is just a clarification thing on your guys' ideas for the property tax code enforcement when we're going to send stuff out. There's kind of a couple options. First, with the tax form, are you wanting us to have the hard cutoff of needs to be in by the deadline for staff packet, which is a week before the meeting, or do you want it for the mail notice? It's kind of mentioned 50-50, and I didn't really know if it was the mail notice, which is 2 weeks before, or the staff packet,
My
which is
intention when I made the motion was a week before. Our packet.
Week before.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I might, why can't it be before it goes on the agenda. That way we don't have.
So then it would be 2 weeks before.
Come in here and
Draw
sit.
Oh, that's not
And
bad.
then they don't get to do anything.
Yeah, that makes
Bad
sense.
on us.
It does.
In the
Same
office.
thing.
Okay, so we will
Yeah,
do,
that's okay. Yeah.
so that would be mail notice, because that's when we make the agenda, which
In
is
that
2
case-
weeks before the meeting or 1 week post-application date. So you
In that
essentially have
case, I'll
7 days.
amend that motion to say 2 weeks before the
2
meeting.
weeks before.
Because even if you've told them 8 times, they walk in here and say you never told them, and it makes
Yeah.
us look questionable.
Rachel, you okay? Because you
Yes.
seconded that motion. Okay.
We will update the schedule then to include notes about it, and I'll run Janie and Carol through the provisions of it, because Rhett and I do it all the time, and we tell people what to do, but Rhett and I are not always there. So, a second item, which is something I had considered, Janet may be familiar with it, with the planning commissioners, we do not send their packets through the mail, we instead just hand deliver them to houses. You guys are a group of 5 out in the county, it might just be easier for us to just make a round trip, make a big old loop with all your packets on Fridays, drop them off on your front doors. That is an option if we just want to kind of circumnavigate the post office issue. We do send out your PDFs to everybody, so if you're fine with the PDF and then waiting for your packet to show up, hopefully it shows up on time. Or again, we can just not do the USPS mail. I'll take a picture of myself with your packet in your front door and be like, all right, I dropped it off, and we'll go onwards and upwards.
I'd rather
It's-
come to the office and pick one up.
That's also an option if you guys want to. I know that Darren travels and Rachel works, so that does make it a little bit difficult for them. But it's honestly, I don't really care which way. If we go out into the world and we drop stuff off, we do it already. If you guys prefer to just stop by the office, we'll be happy to see your faces. You'll see me and my head in my hands, but that's okay.
It's only been like one time.
I have no trouble with the PDFs.
I mean, the PDF is, like, people like PDF. I personally really like paper, but that's just,
Use that.
I'm the one who writes them, so it's easy, and I have the paper. But,
The problem with PDF is not all of us has good
yes,
internet.
the
and
internet
I'm one of them.
connection.
There's no
Yeah.
internet out my way yet.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, usually we get it in the mail, just as long as if we don't get it, if you can have some options for us
Well,
to
you
pick
people
one.
catch-
Yeah, we can always,
That's all.
it's always an option to just call me and say, hey, I haven't gotten it yet. I'm going to come by
Are
today
we
and
doing
pick them up.
elections before she leaves?
Yes, my last item is, sorry, Rachel's running, I guess.
Wait a minute, Rachel, we actually do have to pick officers.
We do have
Oh,
to-
no. Oh, no. Yes.
We do. I'm sorry. This is a lot of administrative stuff this week. I tried to keep it short. I have
Sorry,
things to
that's
do, you have things to do, but we got to do this. We've been pushing it back.
Yeah, I know.
Our current kind of lineup is Darren as chair, Sonia as vice chair. Sonia's expressed no interest in becoming chair, and I don't even know if she wants to be vice chair that badly. So we do need a chair and a vice chair nomination.
Do you want to still do chair?
We would appreciate that you be here for the meetings as much as you can,
I think this.
or at least let us know as soon as possible, that type of deal. But I'll leave it up for you guys to nominate someone. We do need both, unfortunately. Yes, ma'am.
I nominate Darren for chair. Second.
Oh, come on.
Do you accept nomination?
Do I have a choice?
Yes.
If anybody else says there are no more nominations,
Yeah,
He said this is the last year, let him go
I
out
think
the
this is
bank.
the last year I serve anyway.
I think so.
So finish
Yeah,
that.
somehow you are the longest one on the board, which is crazy. You're the shortest guy on the board.
I've always been the shortest guy on the board.
I'm sorry, I had to,
Yeah.
it's a low
I
ball
think I've
here.
done this for like 7 or 8 years.
You have been doing it. This is year 7. So this would be your last year. I think you do expire up in March of next year.
In March of next year.
So you could do another year. Okay, we need a vice chair.
we don't need a vote.
Oh, yes, a vote, please.
All right, the motion has been made by Sonia for me to be chair. That was seconded by Rachel. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please. All right, there are no.
Damn. All right, and then we need a vice chair.
What's this? I nominate Rachel Volke as vice chair.
I won't be here from like January to March though.
Yeah, if there's consistent scheduling conflicts.
Be here.
Between the two of y'all. Otherwise, I really wouldn't mind, but.
I nominate Rachel to be vice chair as long as she coordinates with me when she's going to be gone and make sure I'm here.
How's that? That works. Let them work
All right.
between themselves, and one will always.
I mean, if you guys are willing to be chatty like that and let me know when you guys are going to be there too, please just CC me so that we know.
I second Rachel as vice.
Thank you.
All right, so I made the motion, Sonia seconds. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same. You got stuff.
Woohoo!
You got stuck.
The
Dang.
most excited one of them.
With that, I have no other business.
Hallelujah.
Thank God.
In that case, meeting is adjourned, 6:05.
Dang, too long.
I've been dying to do that, haven't you?